That's this week's payroll. You can't take it. Hand it over. Now. No, get back. You're making this worse. All financial documents are under seizure. Step back.
They stepped over everything he built.
Those are my workers' pay records. $450,000 seized. Accounts frozen. License revoked. 62 people missed payroll in 11 days. Then run your business better. Payroll problems are private sector problems, Mr. Tate.
Raymond didn't argue. He memorized everything.
Ray, should we start looking for other work?
Tell her no. Give me 1 week. It's time.
He hid something inside their wall.
I don't need all day. I need 12 minutes in a room I built. 12 minutes.
Name?
Bobby Tran, HVAC inspection.
He found it exactly where he left it. Hey, what are you doing in there? Checking fire block integrity.
They seized $450, 0 inches contract payments from Raymond Tate on a Tuesday morning, froze his business accounts by noon, revoked his contractor's license before sundown, 3 auditors from the city comptroller's office, 2 officers in plainclothes, and Public Safety Commissioner Dale Pruitt himself, standing in the parking lot of Tate Construction while his people loaded 7 bankers' boxes into the back of a city vehicle. One of the auditors stepped over a framed photograph that had slid off a work shelf during the search Raymond's crew at the Pearland School renovation. 38 people in hard hats, squinting into the sun. The auditor stepped over it without looking down. Nobody picked it up. Raymond noticed that too. Pruitt crossed the parking lot toward him, unhurried. The way a man walks when he has already decided how a conversation ends. He extended his hand. Raymond didn't take it. Payroll problems are private sector problems. Mr. Tate, Pruitt said. His voice was mild, almost helpful. I'd suggest getting ahead of them. He walked back to his vehicle. Raymond watched him go. He didn't call anyone. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood in the parking lot with the photograph face down on the asphalt and counted the plate numbers on both city vehicles and noted the time, 4:47 p.m., and thought about a wall on Beechnut Street because 11 years ago, Raymond Tate had built the Houston Metropolitan Police Headquarters on Beechnut Street. He'd poured every foundation, framed every wall, threaded every conduit. He knew where the structural columns ran. He knew which walls were load-bearing and which were hollow. He knew about the room behind the second-floor conference room, the access panel in the south wall, the small fireproof lockbox he had placed inside before the drywall went up. He'd left it there, thinking he might never need it. He was thinking about it now. Raymond Tate had 62 employees. That was the number that mattered most. Sitting at his kitchen table that night, with the payroll schedule open on his laptop, direct deposit in 11 days, operating account frozen, payroll reserve gone. His father had been a carpenter from the 3rd Ward who read blueprints the way other men read scripture. And he'd told Raymond once that a man who forgets what he's built forgets what he's worth. Raymond looked at the photograph on his wall, the Beechnut headquarters at the ribbon cutting. 2012. Himself shaking the mayor's hand. The building solid and complete behind them. He had built that building. He had built the walls and closed them around something he hoped he'd never need. He took a burner phone from his desk drawer and dialed a number from memory. It rang 4 times. It's Raymond. He said, "It's time." His site foreman cookie at 9. The guys are asking. My wife is asking. Tell her not to worry. I need a week. A week? For what? Rai, can you hold the crew together for a week? A long silence. I can hold them. Raymond hung up and opened a home equity line of credit he'd established 6 months earlier, quietly, on the advice of a lawyer friend who had first noticed the pattern in the municipal contract awards and told him to get liquidity the city couldn't see. He initiated a transfer large enough to cover 2 payroll cycles. The bank system flagged it for automated fraud review. He sat and watched the transfer status page for 90 minutes before it cleared. He didn't exhale. He just moved to the next thing. He drove to Sunnyside the next morning to find his cousin Marcus, who ran a licensed HVAC company out of a yard on Cullen Boulevard. "One day on your crew," Raymond said. "Annual mechanical inspection. City facility." Marcus set down his clipboard. "Which facility?" "Beechnut." "Ray, I built that building. I know every mechanical room, every ceiling chase, every access panel in it. Your license is pulled. Nobody's going to card a man holding a filter gauge and a clipboard." Raymond kept his voice level. "My site foreman has 2 kids in school. His wife is already asking questions. I have 62 people. I need 12 minutes in a room I built with my own hands." Marcus looked at him the way family looks at you when they've already decided. "Inspection is Thursday. You wear my shirt. If anyone asks, you're Bobby Tran. I've got a Bobby Tran who called in sick." He picked up the clipboard. "Don't thank me. Don't get arrested in a shirt with my name on it. Thursday morning. Service entrance." The building administrator ran names against a list and handed out access badges. He looked at Raymond half a second too long. Raymond looked back with the flat expression of a man who had been doing HVAC inspections for 20 years and found them uniformly unremarkable. The administrator waved them through. They worked the basement first. Filter conditions, belt tensions, panel connections. Raymond documented everything. Moving through the building, the way he always moved through buildings he'd made with the ease of someone reading a text they wrote themselves. His father had taught him that the way you learn a structure by building it, and the way that knowledge doesn't leave you. At a Leventon, 2 crew members went to the roof. Marcus took the administrator to the basement to review service logs. Raymond had roughly 14 minutes. He went upstairs. The conference room was empty. Command staff meeting was Thursdays at noon. Downtown, he crossed to the south wall. Behind a framed print of the Houston skyline was the panel. He used a flathead. 30 seconds. The cavity. The box. 11 years undisturbed. He had his hand on it when the conference room door opened. He stayed low. Did not turn. Did not freeze. "Checking fireblock integrity on this chase," he said, in the tone of a man who has said this many times. Discrepancy in the last inspection log. A sergeant's voice, young. "Those panels are supposed to be sealed." Raymond turned just enough to face the wall rather than the open cavity. He pointed with the screwdriver to a real hairline crack above the panel settling stress. Exactly where he'd expected it when he framed this section in 2012. 12 years of thermal movement. The fireblock behind this stud bay may have separated. Same wall system. 4 other locations in this building. He shook his head in the weary way of a professional encountering predictable negligence. Whoever signed the 10-year inspection didn't look at this wing. The sergeant moved 2 steps closer. Raymond felt the geometry of it, the man's angle of sight. The clipboard position. Whether the open cavity was in his line of view, it was not. "Write it up," the sergeant said, and left. Raymond counted 30 full seconds. He replaced the panel, re-hung the print, and was downstairs in 7 minutes. His hands were steady. His heart was not, but the hands were what mattered. The box held 3 emails between Raymond and the Deputy Director of Capital Projects, dated spring 2012. The third contained a sentence Raymond had read 11 years ago and accepted without fully understanding times. "This adjustment has been approved at the appropriate level. Please proceed and do not annotate the project ledger." He'd moved $87,000 from the building's electrical contingency budget into a line called Community Liaison Coordination, a line that didn't appear anywhere in the city's official records. He'd been 38, trying to keep a $3.2 million project on schedule. He'd done what his city contact told him. He understood it differently now. Curtis Lane drove down from Beaumont the next evening. 22 years as an FBI forensic accountant, now retired. Selective about the problems he took on, and one of 3 people on Earth Raymond trusted without qualification. He'd been building a spreadsheet for 3 months. Since Raymond had first called him with concerns about the contract patterns, he laid it out on the kitchen table in plain terms. Meridian Construction wins the contracts. The city's money goes to Meridian. Meridian pays a shell company called Keystone Advisory, registered to the commissioner's brother-in-law. No actual construction services. Keystone distributes the money to private accounts. One of those accounts belongs to Pruitt and his wife. 6 years. Conservative estimate $800. Ling ling ling. Raymond put the 2012 emails on the table. Curtis read them twice, set them down, took off his reading glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose with the particular exhaustion of a man who has spent a career following money and is never entirely surprised by where it leads. Pruitt was on the infrastructure subcommittee in 2012. He approved the beechnut budget. The $87,000 would have needed his authorization to clear. He tapped the 3rd email. Do not annotate the project ledger. That's not bureaucratic sloppiness. Raymond. That's a man who already knows what he's doing and is teaching someone else how to hide it. He was using city budget lines then. Before Keystone. Before Meridian. Before any of the current machinery, he was learning the mechanism on your project. Your project was the prototype. Curtis looked up, and when the deputy director died in 2020, he took the institutional memory of it with him. Pruitt thought the 2012 piece was buried. It was buried. Raymond said, in a wall. Curtis looked at him for a moment without speaking. Then, we can't make a federal case on 11-year-old emails alone. We need someone inside Meridian's current books, someone who can speak to how the scheme works now. What Calloway knew, how the instructions were given. He paused. I know a supervising agent in the FBI Public Corruption Task Force. She ran the Galveston Port corruption case in 2019. She doesn't owe Pruitt anything, but going to the FBI means Pruitt finds out. He has sources. When he does, he will escalate. Raymond thought about the payroll transfer. The 90 minutes watching the status page, about 62 people and their families, about the photograph face down on the parking lot asphalt, and the auditor who'd stepped over it without looking down, call her. He said the federal agent met them in Sugarland, 30 miles from downtown. She read the emails once, asked Raymond 3 questions, wrote down the answers to 2 of them. Then, I can keep the intake limited to my task force for now. No broad circulation. No unnecessary notifications. Nothing beyond what standard procedure requires. That gives us room to work, but it means I can't touch the forfeiture yet. I need inside Meridian's books first. Meridian's CFO. Raymond said. She's been with the company 9 years. She's been signing Keystone invoices for 7 of them. I don't think she knows what Keystone actually is. Getting to her is the problem. I have a lawyer named Cheryl Odom. She withdrew from my case, under pressure. They threatened her son's parole. But she knows the CFO socially, and she withdrew because she was frightened. That's not the same as done. Cheryl opened her office door on Saturday morning with the look of a woman who had been waiting for this conversation and hadn't slept well waiting. I'm not here to make you feel worse. Raymond said, I need an introduction to Sharon Ballard. That's all I'm asking. She let him in. The office looked like a place where someone had been working too late for too many nights, files stacked at an angle that suggested they'd been moved and restacked more than once. A cold coffee mug on the corner of the desk with a ring under it. She sat behind the desk like she needed the desk between them. They threatened Marcus. She said, his parole officer received a call from someone inside the city's system, a technical violation that wasn't a violation, they just needed the flag to exist. She looked at the window. They told me exactly what would happen to his supervised release if I kept working your case. She paused. I withdrew the day after they called. I told myself I'd find another way to help. Send something anonymously. connect you with someone else. I didn't. I just stopped. I know. Do you? Because you don't have children. Raymond. No. I have 62 employees. He kept his voice even. And I know that's not the same thing. I'm not asking you to do anything that puts Marcus at risk. I'm asking you to make one phone call to a woman who has been unknowingly used for 7 years and deserves to know it. He paused. Sharon Ballard. Which way does she go when she finds out what she's been signing? Cheryl was quiet for a moment, not performing deliberation, actually thinking. She ran a pro bono housing clinic for 4 years. Nobody asked her to. The organization didn't need her specifically. She just found out it existed and started showing up. She picked up her phone. I'll call her today. Cheryl called. Sharon said no. 3 days of silence. Then no. She had a family. She had a career. She'd spent 9 years building. The lawyer delivered the news with the careful neutrality of someone expecting Raymond to collapse. He sat with the phone for a moment after he hung up. He understood the calculation. Pruitt's entire operation ran on it, not violence. Not obvious coercion. Just the steady, quiet application of consequence to every person who might otherwise act. Make the cost of doing right slightly higher than the cost of staying silent. Do it long enough, and the silence becomes structural. Give me her number, he told Cheryl. Raymond, 3 minutes. I'll tell her what she's been signing. After that, she can hang up and I won't call again. He called Sharon that evening. She picked up after 4 rings. I know you said no. He said, 3 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 3 minutes. She said. He told her exactly what Keystone Advisory was. Not the full scope, just the mechanism. City contract to Meridian. Meridian to Keystone. Keystone to Pruitt's family accounts. 7 years of Sharon's signed approvals used as the paper trail that made it look legitimate. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. I asked Calloway about those invoices twice. She finally said, he looked me in the eye both times. I know. My name is on 7 years of those documents, because he needed a real CFO's signature to make them look real. That's not the same as being responsible for what they were. He waited. But you're the only one who can close this. Another silence. Then I'm going to need my own attorney. Sharon arrived at the federal agent's office 4 days later with her lawyer and a portable hard drive she set on the table before she even sat down. 7 years of internal Meridian financials. She said, I'm done processing Calloway's invoices. Curtis spent 2 days on the transaction map. The agent subpoenaed the bank accounts. The records confirmed it. $2. $3 million from Keystone to 3 personal recipients. The third account was registered jointly to Dale and Marguerite Pruitt. It should have been the end of the groundwork. Pruitt made sure it wasn't. 5 days later, Raymond's site foreman called at 6 a.m. Someone had broken into the job yard overnight. The storage trailer where they kept hard copy project files was open. Padlock cut. Contents scattered across the ground. Not vandalism, this was deliberate. Someone had been looking for something. Don't touch anything. Raymond told him. Call it in as a B&E. Don't say anything about what's in those files. He called Curtis from the truck. He's looking for documentation. What did they take? It doesn't matter what they took. Nothing that matters, is there everything that matters, is with the agent. He thought about it for a moment. What matters is that he's scared enough to do this. He doesn't break into job yards if he feels safe. 2 days after that, a story appeared on a local website that had a history of running favorable content for City Hall. Raymond Tate had been under federal investigation for bid inflation since 2020. No source, no documents, because there were none. But the story ran, and 2 of his subcontractors called him within the hour to ask whether they should be concerned. Raymond called them back individually. He spent those conversations listening to the specific quality of tension in their voices and understanding exactly what Pruitt was doing with the false story. The break-in had been about finding paper, The planted story was about erosion softening the ground around Raymond, making him look like a man with his own legal exposure, so that when his accusations came, they'd be easier to dismiss as a counterattack from someone under pressure. Pruitt had been doing this for 6 years. He understood how to make the noise around a person louder than the person's voice. Raymond understood something too. A man who breaks into your storage trailer and plants false news stories is a man who has run out of quieter options. The trap was almost closed. Pruitt could feel it. Then, on a Thursday evening, Tony called. Ray. 2 plainclothes officers came to my house this afternoon, asked about my relationship with Tate Construction, asked if I knew anything about subcontractor payments. His voice was controlled in the way of a man working very hard to stay that way. My wife was home. My kids were home. Raymond was silent for a moment. What did you tell them? The truth, that I'm a site foreman who does his job and goes home. Good. Raymond kept his voice steady, even though something had shifted under it a cold weight. The specific weight of knowing Pruitt was now willing to reach into people's homes. Tony, I need you to hold on 3 more days. Can you do that? A beat. 3 days. Raymond sat with the phone after Tony hung up. Outside his kitchen window, the deck his father had built was lit by the back porch light. The old man had been gone 6 years, but the deck was still straight, still solid. Every joint fitted the way the old man always fitted things. Nothing redundant, nothing missing. Pruitt had just made a calculation. He decided that Raymond could be frightened off through the people closest to him. It was a rational move, the kind that worked on most people, because most people had something to lose beyond themselves. Tony had a wife and children. The lawyer had a son on parole. The CFO had a career. Pruitt understood that an isolated man could sometimes hold on indefinitely. But a man, surrounded by people he cared about, was always a vulnerability. What Pruitt didn't understand was that Raymond had spent 14 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, learning to design structures that held under exactly that kind of distributed load. He called the federal agent. He sent plainclothes to my foreman's house. His family was home. I know. I heard. Her voice was flat. He's burning his options. Men who do this either retreat or go all the way. Pruitt doesn't retreat. I pause. I need you to take a meeting with him. In person. He'll reach out. The city's legal office has already called your number twice this week. Let him think he can negotiate his way out. And if he can't, he can't. But he needs to say that in a room where I can hear it. Raymond didn't answer. The city's legal office calls for 4 days. He let them accumulate on his voicemail. On the 5th day, Pruitt called directly from an unlisted number, no intermediary, which told Raymond 2 things. Pruitt didn't fully trust his own staff, and he was operating scared enough to handle this personally. They met at a restaurant in Greenway Plaza. Raymond arrived early, sat with his back to the wall, and counted 2 plainclothes officers near the entrance before Pruitt even walked in. He noted the exits. He noted the table Pruitt's assistant had reserved center of the room. Sightlines in every direction. No wall at Pruitt's back, because Pruitt was the kind of man who believed he didn't need one. He was wearing a federal wire under his work shirt, and he spent the waiting minutes not thinking about the wire, but about the wall on Beechnut Street, about the south panel, about the specific moment, 11 years ago, when he'd fitted the access cover into the framing and thought, I hope I never need this. I'm going to build it anyway. Preparation and patience. The 2 things the Army had given him that no one could take. Pruitt could take his money, his license, his operating capital, his reputation in the local press. He couldn't take the 14 years that had made Raymond the kind of man who built things with contingencies built into them before anyone told him to. Pruitt came in looking like a man conducting a routine constituent meeting jacket. Open collar, handshake with practiced warmth. He ordered water. He waited until the server left. Raymond, I want to apologize for how this unfolded. The forfeiture was triggered by an automated compliance flag without adequate human review. That's a process failure, and I take responsibility for it. Good. Measured. Giving nothing. I'd like to return the seized funds within 2 weeks. Pruitt continued, and I'd like to discuss reinstating your license. The city values experienced contractors. That's generous. Raymond said. What do you need from me? Pruitt smiled. I'd just like to understand the full picture when disputes escalate. Sometimes parties receive incomplete information. I want to make sure we're working from the same facts. He was asking who Raymond had talked to. Raymond let the silence run 3 full seconds, long enough for the smile to require slightly more maintenance than before. Dale. First name. He watched the small shift behind Pruitt's eyes. When I was building the Beechnut facility in 2012, the deputy director of capital projects asked me to move $87,000 from the electrical contingency line into something called Community Liaison Coordination. He told me it had been approved at the appropriate level. He told me not to annotate the project ledger. Pruitt's water glass was halfway to his mouth. It stayed there. At the time, I thought it was interagency flexibility, but I documented it anyway. Raymond's voice was conversational, unhurried. The way you document things when a job site feels wrong, and you can't name why. The way you document things when the army has spent 14 years teaching you that the only protection you have is what you wrote down before anything went sideways. He looked at Pruitt steadily. I documented it, and I kept it somewhere you would never have found. The glass came back to the table with a precision that told Raymond everything, the deliberateness of a man catching himself. Raymond. Pruitt's voice dropped, almost gentle. You should be careful about what you're suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what I kept and where I kept it. Raymond reached into his jacket and set a business card on the table. That's the supervising agent in the FBI Public Corruption Task Force. She's been interested in the Beechnut Project's 2012 budget records. She's also spoken recently with Sharon Ballard. The name landed. Pruitt's face held. But the stillness had a different quality now, not the stillness of composure, but the stillness of something that had just understood its position. Get your own attorney, Raymond said. Today, not the city's. He left $60 on the table and walked out. His phone buzzed before he reached the parking lot. 2 words from the agent Times. We heard. She called. 30 seconds later. He's moving to wipe Meridian's servers. We execute at 7 a.m. Go home. Raymond. Do you have enough? We had enough before today. What he said on record today is the lock on the door. He didn't go downtown to watch the arrest. He drove to the 3rd Ward and sat in the parking lot of a diner on Alameda, where his father had eaten every Saturday morning for 30 years. Same sign. Same booths. Coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. He ordered a cup and a plate of eggs he mostly left untouched and sat with the morning while the city moved around him in its ordinary way. He thought about Tony's wife. Home when the plainclothes officers knocked. He thought about what that cost, not the legal exposure, not the intimidation, but the specific violation of someone walking up to the door of the place where your family lives and making it clear that nothing is separate from the case. Pruitt had done that deliberately. He'd understood that the weakest point in Raymond's network wasn't Raymond himself, but the people Raymond felt responsible for. He'd applied pressure exactly there. The way water finds a gap in a foundation. He thought about Cheryl, who had withdrawn and carried that with her for 4 months before she made a different choice. About Sharon, who had said no and then reconsidered in the span of a 3-minute phone call. About 11 construction companies whose owners had spent years going back through their own numbers, looking for the mistake they'd made, the flaw they'd missed, the reason the system kept passing them over and found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. The flaw had been in the system, not in them. Some of what Pruitt had done didn't get fully repaired by an arrest. Some of it had already settled into the foundations of people's lives, the way bad concrete settles invisible until the load shifted. That was the part of corruption that rarely made it into the federal complaint, the damage to how people understood their own work, the years of a carpenter who doubts his measurements, a contractor who revises bids, looking for errors that aren't there. His father had told him once that the worst thing you could do to a craftsman was make him doubt his own hands. Raymond had built things for 30 years. He understood what that meant now, in a way he hadn't when he was 18. You couldn't fix all of it. You could build the case, put it in front of the people with the authority to act on it, and accept that complete and just were not always the same word. At 7:15 a.m., his phone rang. "We're moving," the agent said. "Oui." Callaway. And a city insider named Stokes, who's been coordinating the contract evaluations from inside the procurement office for 6 years. He was also on the Beechnut project in 2012. He's the one who called Cheryl's son's parole officer. We have the phone records. The city returned his $450. 0 inches, 61 hours. His license was reinstated Monday. His 62 employees never missed a second paycheck. Pruitt was convicted on 12 federal counts. 14 years. Callaway pled guilty. Stokes cooperated. And his testimony reached 2 city council members in proceedings that ran through the following spring. Raymond called Tony when it was done. "Tell your wife," he said. He heard something shift in Tony's voice, not words. Just the sound of a man releasing something he'd been holding. "Ray, what did you actually do?" Raymond was standing at the window of his kitchen, looking at the deck his father had built. The joints fitted the way the old man always fitted them. Nothing redundant, nothing missing. "I built the case," he said. "Now I'm going to build the school." There was one thing he hadn't told anyone. When he'd replaced the panel in the beechnut wall after taking the box, he'd placed something new inside before sealing it shut. A single sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve. If you're reading this, something was built wrong somewhere in this building's history. Start with the subcontractor payments on whatever the largest recent project was. The money almost always moves the same way. He signed it with his name and the date. He'd done it the way his father taught him to build, not just for the load the structure was carrying now, but for the load it might face later. After he was gone, after everything that made any particular moment necessary had changed into something unrecognizable, you couldn't know what a building would face over its lifetime. You could only make sure that somewhere inside it, there was something honest, something that told the truth to whoever came next. Whatever you build for the people who'll use it after you're gone. You build honest. You build to last. And if someone tries to take it from you, you build the case inside the walls before you close them up. Because the walls you build around the truth are the strongest ones you'll ever make. If you stayed with Raymond Tate this far, you already know what kind of man he is. He never raised his voice. He never asked for anything he wasn't owed. He just waited until every piece was in position, and then he let each piece do exactly what he'd built it to do. Here's what I keep thinking about after he took the box from that wall. He put something new inside before he sealed it shut. He'd already won. Nothing left to prove. He left it for someone he'll never meet. Facing something he can't predict. That's not strategy. That's character. What would you have done in that parking lot? Watching them load 7 years of your work into city vehicles, while the man who ordered it told you payroll was a private sector problem. Would you have had Raymond's patience, or would you have done what most of us would demanded, an answer right there, and handed them exactly what they needed? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had a system work against you and found your way through, I want to hear that story. Like and subscribe. The next one is coming.